Welcome. Just when tensions with the US seem to be calming slightly, North Korea has test-fired a long-range missile which it says can directly hit mainland America, describing it as the most powerful one yet. President Trump has consistently used tough talk with the regime and again has promised the situation will be taken care of. Meanwhile, the UN Security Council has convened an emergency meeting in New York for later on Wednesday. Our diplomatic correspondent Paul Adams has more from South Korea.
The face and the voice of North Korean defiance. Announcer Ri Chun-hee with news of Pyongyang's latest and boldest missile test. Kim Jong-un photographed giving the order. "I approve this test launch," he writes, "for the party and the country. Courageously fire." This was the 23rd missile test this year, the first since mid-September. It took off in the early hours of the morning north of the capital, Pyongyang. It flew for 53 minutes, landing in the sea 600 miles away. And crucially, it flew higher than any previous missile, 2,800 miles up into space. Experts say this means North Korea now has missiles capable of hitting almost anywhere in America. After a pause in testing that lasted 75 days, this is a stark reminder of the determination of the North Korean leader to pursue his nuclear and missile program. Today's statement from Pyongyang that the program poses no threat to anyone, provided the country's interests are not infringed, will come as little comfort.
A missile was launched a little while ago from North Korea. I will only tell you that we will take care of it.
A fresh challenge for President Trump and his administration. Little doubt here that this represents something new.
It went higher, frankly, than any previous shot they've taken. It's a research and development effort on their part to continue building ballistic missiles that could threaten everywhere in the world.
Korea's President Moon Jae-in on the phone to Donald Trump this morning. The test took his government by surprise. He called it a reckless provocation. South Korea responded with a missile test of its own, but warnings, threats and pressure appear to be having little effect. Kim Jong-un says North Korea now has its own nuclear force. A bold claim, but only partially true. He has the bombs and the missiles. Putting one on top of the other and making it work, that's still some way off. Paul Adams, BBC News, Seoul.
OK, let's get more reaction to that missile test. Celia Hatton is our Asia-Pacific regional editor. Celia, good to see you. Just give us a sense of what's being said, what's the reaction in the region from Tokyo to South Korea?
Well, some of the reaction is kind of predictable. Of course, South Korea was quite upset, calling it a violent act, and really calling for more sanctions, which is interesting, since the South Korean president had originally campaigned on wanting to improve ties with North Korea. Japan released a statement saying it was quite upset. Quite strong statements, though, from both Russia and China, stressing their concerns, saying that this was quite a serious act. And so you can feel the frustration a little bit from China and Russia. That doesn't mean, though, that we might see a significant change in their positions at the UN Security Council. We'll have to wait and see what they do, whether they authorize more sanctions. But yes, we're seeing, really some of the norm, but also some quite strongly worded statements from two key players.
And we are expecting the Security Council to convene later today. So will sanctions be on the table then?
I think we can look at a few more sanctions. Now, experts are saying there are basically two more things that really could be done, really that would hurt North Korea's economy, and both things really hinge on China's agreement to them. If China really hardened up that border between China and North Korea, that would really hurt North Korea, because it would stop a lot of the cross-border trade, underground trade that goes on, that really is propping up the North Korean economy. Also, if China agreed to allow North Korea's airline to stop flying into Beijing, that would really hurt the North Koreans as well. But again, this really does hinge on China, and by extension, it hinges on the United States, because the United States has really been putting pressure on China. The U.S. Treasury has been starting to place sanctions on Chinese companies that they say are doing hundreds of millions of dollars worth of business with North Korea. So we're seeing a bit of a chain effect here when it comes to sanctions.
And Celia, I mean, we've seen this go on, this back and forth for months now. Tough talk towards China as well to rein in North Korea. I mean, are we now in a place where we just have to accept that North Korea will develop these nuclear weapons?
Well, more and more, that's really what I'm hearing when I speak to analysts, when I speak to experts. At first, it was just kind of whispered a few months ago. Well, maybe we'll just have to accept that they're on this path. But I think now it's being talked about more and more. Is North Korea, is Kim Jong-un so focused on developing a nuclear weapon? And we have to remember, he doesn't have to develop a whole arsenal of perfect weapons. He just needs a defensive set of weapons. He just needs one weapon to work once. That's really all he needs to prove that he has, and then his mission is almost accomplished. He's not that far off of that, and he might have already achieved most of his objectives. So are we now in a place where we just have to accept that that's where we are and kind of work from that framework instead of continually discussing about forcing North Korea to stop its nuclear weapons development?
We'll have to see how this all continues to develop. Celia, thanks so much for your analysis.